Hello and welcome back to That's Entertainment, the weekly show where we look at all the interesting entertainment news from last week, this week. This looked like it was going to be the biggest story out of Hollywood this week. Cineworld confirmed plans to reopen its US Regal theatres in April and its UK cinemas in May. The announcement also revealed Cineworld has agreed a deal with Warner Brothers. Beginning in 2022, they will show the studio's movies with a 45-day theatrical window. That's for the USA, and for the UK, it's between 31 and 45 days. The real significance of this deal, true to their word, Warner Brothers will stop releasing movies simultaneously in cinemas on their HBO Max streaming service at the end of this year. And according to the CEO of Cineworld, Mookie Greidinger, Cineworld are actively negotiating terms and structures of evolving theatrical windows with all of our studio partners, as the company announced its first ever annual loss. But the astute industry player remains optimistic about the future, telling Deadline, "We trust and believe, at the end of the day, that the theatrical exclusivity is of interest to all sides, exhibition, studios, and movie makers. As long as the theatrical exclusivity is kept in a way, we are all going to do well, and people will still run to movies in cinemas. For studios, it's clear that the more a movie is successful in cinemas, the more successful and popular it is in the auxiliary markets, merchandising, parks, etc." But all this was dashed. Just hours afterwards, an announcement was made from Disney. Marvel's Black Widow will no longer be the film to launch at the summer 2020 box office. The film's release date has been moved yet again from May 7th to July 9th. But the most shocking part of the news, the eagerly awaited potential comic book blockbuster will now debut simultaneously on Disney+, where subscribers will be able to rent it as a Premier Access title for the additional fee of $30. Industry opinion has been that the Premier Access model wasn't a great success when Disney debuted its digital exclusive with Mulan last year, and research undertaken by analytics startup Antenna suggested that the recent simultaneous theatrical and premiere release of Raya and the Last Dragon was even less of an online success. According to Antenna, Raya received 20% fewer purchases on Disney Plus in the US over its opening weekend than Mulan did, although Raya was available to be seen in cinemas at the same time. And there was a 30% decline in sign-ups to Disney Plus in the US during Raya's first weekend compared to the previous 4 weekends. So why did Disney decide to follow this release model for Black Widow? The plan also ties in with Bob Chapek's recent comments, where he was quoted as saying, "We believe it's important to put the consumer in charge and let them decide how they want to enjoy our films, particularly as we navigate through the pandemic." According to the studio, the Premier Access release of Maya was actually a success for them, although they didn't back this up with any numbers. An increasingly common practice when any streaming service makes a similar claim. However, as the Hollywood Reporter shrewdly noted, it's clear they generated enough business for the company to keep experimenting. The decision also unveiled just days after the debut of Marvel's second live-action series on Disney+, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. According to a separate announcement from the studio, the show's debut was the most watched series premiere ever for the streaming service during its opening weekend, and the most watched title overall for all the same time period on a global basis. While Disney once again chose not to go back to back up these claims with any numbers, according to smart TV content recommendation engine and viewer tracking app Samba TV, 795,000 US households screened the first episode on Friday, the day the show debuted, and a total of 1.7 million households watched it over the entire 3-day weekend. This follows on from another Marvel success, WandaVision, which also debuted on Disney+, and it shows that fans of the Marvel movie franchise are as comfortable watching those characters at home as they are in cinemas. Are Disney gambling on the fact that this audience will therefore be happy to pay an extra $30 to watch Black Widow from the comfort of their couch, with the studio not having to share the revenue with the cinema? Will Black Widow's Premier Access release be the proof the studios need that a billion-dollar blockbuster no longer needs a theatrical release? If so, what impact will that have on cinemas? As Paramount's domestic distribution president Chris Aronson pointed out to The Hollywood Reporter this week, moviegoing attendance from 2010 to 2019 is down by over 7%. In that same period, ticket prices have gone up by over 16%. That's not the kind of diagram you want to see. Well, what can I say? I think everyone is trying to experiment here. I applaud the attempts at innovation that are made across different release patterns. I think, this is just the nature of the pandemic. It's going to cause people to be less cautious about taking risks or new ideas. It is disappointing that Disney has made this decision because I think, a lot of people working within the industry were looking at the release of Black Widow as the hallmark for the drawing back of the pandemic and the impacts on the industry and the beginnings of a bright new future. There are lots of other interesting films releasing soon, so hopefully that will be enough to cause people to flock back to the cinemas in May. In other theatrical news, Disney also announced Cruella will be debuting on Disney Plus when it opens in cinemas at the end of May, while its next Pixar movie, Luca, will follow the footsteps of its immediate predecessor, Soul, and debut as part of the regular Disney Plus subscription offering this summer. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is to be released in Chinese cinemas next month and is expected to take more money at the box office than it did in the first time when it was released. This follows the success of the recent release of Avatar there, which earned another $50 million to date. Incredible numbers, incredible market. Godzilla vs. Kong is also doing well at the Chinese box office. Its first day on release last Friday saw it set the highest China opening day by a Hollywood release since the start of the pandemic. The film is released there by Chinese-owned Legendary Pictures, who produced it. Warner Brothers are behind the film's release everywhere else in the world, and we will be hoping it can replicate that success globally this week when it comes out. If you would like to like, comment, or subscribe to the show, remember that we both publish to LinkedIn and to YouTube. Talk to you again soon. Goodbye.